Hey everybody, welcome back to Vegas Weekly for Saturday, July the 23rd, 2022. I'm going to talk about some more news topics today. I got an interesting video that I'm going to share with you. I want to get your feedback on it. And a few housekeeping notes along the way. Appreciate all of you who had such, I would say, almost universally positive comments on last week's rant. It's a show I kind of threw together at the last minute. You'll kind of understand that better in due course, but did have to try to put that together in a pretty short time frame. So I'm glad that so many of you found it enlightening. And speaking of enlightening, this Wednesday, believe it or not, this Wednesday will already be time for our monthly live stream. And I debated not doing it, but I'm going to do it. I don't know if we'll do a whole hour, an hour and a half, that kind of stuff, but we'll definitely come on. And I've got some stuff to talk about that I haven't talked about up until now. Okay, so there's a teaser there. If you tune in on Wednesday, you'll hear some stuff that I haven't talked about at all on the show so far, but that I think you might be interested in hearing about. The title of today's show is 40 Days and, well, I guess 40 Nights. And as I record this episode here on Friday afternoon, it is basically 40 days and 40 nights until I will return to Las Vegas, the end of August, for the Mark Timber events. And as many of you know, I'll be there from, well, basically a little over a week, actually, 8 nights. So looking forward to that. I'm staying at Excalibur, and that ought to be interesting for one night. Moving over to Mandalay Bay for 4 nights, and then wrapping up at Planet Hollywood the last 3 nights. So really looking forward to that. Got a few sort of small events planned along the way, but I think probably the only sort of big event is the Mark Timber celebration on the 5th, and that will sort of roll over, I guess you'd say, into my birthday, which of course is on the 6th. So you're going to be in or around Las Vegas at that time period, and you're interested in saying hello, hit me up, and I'll try to squeeze you into my extraordinarily busy schedule, which shouldn't be super busy. But so that's coming up in, like I said, just under 6 weeks now, I guess. May have a possible programming delay a little bit again on coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be visiting my family up in Nebraska from Monday through Thursday. So I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity to do our podcast and our regular tips and tricks show that week or not. We may be able to put something together. We may have some alternate programming actually, and I'll talk about that a little bit more also on Wednesday. So I'll get a thumbnail up for that. It'll almost certainly be 6 o'clock Vegas time, as it typically is. And for those few hardcore addicts of the podcast, we did not do a podcast on Monday because I was sick, actually running a fever of sorts for a while. So I did not take the time to do a podcast that day. We should be back this Monday after a 2-week hiatus, however. Before I want to get started on sort of the news topics that I wanted to talk about real briefly today, I happened to see a video actually early this morning as I was laying in bed getting ready to wake up. YouTube suggested a video that curiously was not really suggested to me because of Las Vegas as much as because of my sort of interest in geography and the US and things like that. So, and it was talking about the sort of how preposterous it was that Las Vegas existed and existed where it is. And it ended up talking, I think, in some detail, at least in 13, 15-minute video, whatever, about some of the water issues in the American Southwest and how Las Vegas fits into that puzzle, as well as all of the other southwestern states and some of the problems. And we talked about Lake Mead a few weeks back and the dangerously declining water level there. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link to this video in the show notes below. check it out. I think it portrays Las Vegas in a pretty positive light. Like it does, I think, portray Las Vegas in a positive light in terms of its effort to recycle and reuse water compared to some of the other states and municipalities that are also drawing on that Colorado River reservoir of sorts. So again, check that out. And what do you think? I think he makes a good point. I think he's completely out there in left field. Whatever it is, well, I'd love your feedback on that. Okay, so we're going to go through sort of the news segment today, and some of it is a follow-up. We'll start out with the potential curfew in downtown Las Vegas. We got a much better idea of what that would look like this past week, and the proposal is out there, and it will be voted on in early August by the City Council. It seems to me likely to pass, but these are the parameters basically, in that there would be a curfew overnights on the weekends from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. It would encompass basically the sort of tourist areas of downtown from Carson Street on the south to Ogden Street on the north. That's basically the blocks north and south of Fremont, and then all the way over to Main on the west, down to 8th Street on the east. So basically Fremont Street going down that center, and then a block on either side. There would be a curfew. You'd have to be 21 in order to enter, and I'm not sure otherwise as far as some of the the screening procedures or metal detectors, that sort of thing. I have already seen some indications that some of that is happening, so I suspect that will continue as well. Again, on that we will not know for certain for about another 10 days or so, but my guess is we're going to see it happen in some form that looks very much like that. So a rare and unusual event this week in Las Vegas, something you just almost never hear about, at least the way it was announced. And that is that the Station Casinos properties, I don't know, I think they go by Red Rock Resorts now, or something to that effect. As you may recall, after the COVID shutdown was rescinded now basically a couple of years ago, they did not reopen some of their properties. The Palms was one of those, and of course that got sold and has since reopened under new ownership. And the other three properties that never reopened were Texas Station, the Fiesta Rancho, and the Fiesta Henderson. Now these were all more or less outlying locals sorts of properties. Both Fiesta Rancho and Texas Station were in North Las Vegas on Rancho, quite a bit to the north end of the city. I had occasion to visit the properties a couple of times. Many years ago, probably over 20 years ago, Fiesta Rancho was known as like the royal flush capital of the world or something like that. They even had like a tie-in with Bob Dancer and some of the video poker software. I think at a certain point probably the pros just kind of came in and invaded the place, and at some point we saw those sorts of pay tables get knocked down at least a little bit. Texas Station right across the street, just another one of these station casinos, but probably the one most people never visited. I said I did have a chance to visit it a couple of times. They had a really pretty good buffet back in the day, which I had on a couple of different occasions. Both of those properties, along with, as I say, the Fiesta Henderson, are going to be demolished. Wow. Yeah, they're just knocking them down. They're selling the land for redevelopment of some sort. Now, I suspect the two properties in North Las Vegas suffered greatly from location. That is an increasingly sort of sketchy part of Las Vegas, and or at least one has to travel through some pretty sketchy parts of Las Vegas and North Las Vegas to reach those properties, and I suspect that was a strong consideration in the closing. But Fiesta Henderson, not really in a bad neighborhood at all. But the Rancho properties and the Fiesta Rancho and the Fiesta Henderson were acquired by Station. Oh, I don't know. It's probably been now 20 years ago or more. And then they were kind of big competitors. The Fiesta properties were, And I think they bought them as much to kind of shut them up as anything else. And they've been sort of under the radar since then. But it is curious to see that they're not going to reopen. That is very unusual. It'll be interesting to see if anybody else develops that land. Clearly there was not a market for purchasing the casino itself, or you would think they would certainly have done so, but that was not the case. They're going to sell just the land itself. Now, in a somewhat related topic, Station purchased 126 acres at the intersection of Las Vegas Boulevard and Cactus Road. Now, if like me, you don't spend a lot of time cruising up and down Cactus Road, it is located approximately halfway between the South Point and the M. So it's in the way sort of south outskirts of Las Vegas. I don't think there's really anything there now, but that would be the likely site of a potential new resort. And keep in mind that Station just recently broke ground on a property that's been promised for, I don't know, 3-4 years. The Durango, whether it's going to be Durango Station or just Durango, I don't know, which is also sort of on the southwest side of town on the sort of 215 loop, kind of a busy growing area. So we talked about, I think we've talked about it a couple of times now, the potential growth to the south part of the Strip, areas that have not been developed. We talked about the Dream Hotel groundbreaking and that coming online here in a year or two. We talked about the potential stadium development at Blue Diamond and Las Vegas Boulevard. And now we're looking potentially at a development several miles further to the south that would likely be a pretty significant property and would, of course, still most likely appeal to locals. But we'll keep an eye on that. That is certainly an interesting turn of affairs. The final news segment isn't necessarily news per se, because I don't think anything official has been announced yet, but it's become increasingly clear that once Hard Rock takes over the operations at the Mirage, which again will probably be sometime towards the end of this year, they are likely to shutter the property for a time as they do some remodeling. I assume that will be some refurbishing of some of the rooms, perhaps the casino and the other public areas. It will likely include the removal of the volcano and perhaps the beginnings, at least, of a new hotel tower. It's been probably one of the most controversial sort of changes we've seen in Las Vegas in many, many years. You almost have to go back to some of the ancient sort of properties, like the Sands or the Desert Inn. I guess there were probably even people that were sort of nostalgic about places like the Dunes, when those properties were basically shuttered, in those cases actually demolished. But this is going to be a very different property once Hard Rock puts its imprint on it. I mean, I would think there's a pretty good chance they'll keep the Beatles' Love show. That kind of goes hand in hand. And I do look forward to seeing what they do with it. As beautiful as the front area of the Mirage was, with the landscaping, the volcano, and even the entryway and the atrium there, beautiful. The hotel itself, starting to get a little long in the tooth, could use a little refurb. The casino area, a little bit dark, not up to sort of modern standards, I would say. So I, for one, am excited to see what they do with it, but it is always sad to see something that's become such a huge part of your life. And for those of us who've been going to Las Vegas even as long as 25, 30 years or more, the Mirage has always been there. It's always been a kind of landmark. It was always something we kind of took for granted. You know, we was like, oh yeah, the volcano, you need to go see that, but we didn't for 5 or 10 years, most of us. I don't know when the official transfer of ownership is going to take place. And maybe they don't either. It comes down probably to some final regulatory approval and a few dotted I's and crossed T's. But if you're going to be in Las Vegas anytime in the next 6 to 10 weeks, and many of you probably are, this would definitely be a chance to revisit a place that has probably got a lot of memories for you, even if you've never stayed there. And I only spent one night there. I know a number of folks have booked rooms towards the end of the year. I've not looked to see if there's like an end date for the room bookings. I suspect MGM will continue to take reservations down the line, and if the property is officially sold, they'll probably move those reservations somewhere like Bellagio, I would guess. So I'm not sure that that alone will be a good indicator, but I'm already told that there's not much left in terms of Mirage merch if you're looking to pick up a souvenir, but I guess you could always look around and maybe you could steal a towel or something. But I'll miss the Mirage as it is, but I will also look forward to the Hard Rock and what it becomes. Okay, thanks as always for joining us here on Vegas Weekly. It is a labor of love, and it is always much appreciated when you leave your comments below, when you hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed already, I encourage you to do so. We'll be back again next Saturday with another episode of Vegas Weekly, and until then, I hope that you have a great, lucky, and healthy week. We'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.